going, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. In this week's video, I'm going to be giving another doll a horror makeover. So I'm going to be taking Ghostface from the Scream franchise and sort of giving it a fashion doll reimagining. So let's just hop right into it. So I thought my candidate for this makeover was going to be this Ever After High apple white doll, I believe. And as you can see, she has some staining on her face, but I was like, oh, it's mostly her ears, that won't really be a problem. Well, we'll get to that in a second. So I go through the motions of removing her hair and scraping out the inside of her head with a screwdriver so that I can remove the good hair and glue chunks from within. But as I went to go remove her face, it became very apparent that she's not actually going to be usable for this project, though I kept going through the motions of removing the paint as if it would get better by the end of it. I don't know why I thought that, so I was inevitably disappointed. And I know there's ways to remove stains from doll heads, but I just did not have time to do that, so I got a different gal and we're moving on with her face. So this doll is actually a commission, and the request I got was for a Scream doll, which was pretty open-ended, no specific character in mind, just a Scream doll that's probably a girl, and that's kind of it. And so with that, I had a lot of creative freedom, and so since I'm reimagining the Ghostface costume, and a lot of people have worn it throughout, you know, the entire franchise, I decided for the face of this doll, I would draw some inspiration from Neve Campbell, because, you know, she's our main gal, you know, she's our final girl, and, you know, it's not exactly a portrait of Neve Campbell, but I just thought I would take, you know, some of her features here and there. Speaking of Neve Campbell, what's your guys' thoughts on them making a new Scream movie without her? Because honestly, it sounds like a flop. Like, to be fair, I didn't even watch Scream 5 because I don't know, I just didn't. Honestly, I kind of stopped after number 3. Like, I've seen Scream 4, but I'm not terribly impressed by it. And another one? Did we need more? Like, I heard it was good. I heard people liked it, but also I didn't hear a lot of people talk about it. So, I mean, they got enough money to want to make a 6th one, so apparently somebody cared, but I don't know. I feel like I have such mixed opinions about slasher sequels, because on one hand, I do really appreciate the, like, escalating camp that comes with, you know, these slasher movies that have a bajillion sequels. You know, by like, what, number 10 of the Friday the 13th movies, they're sending Jason into space, and, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't even know what's going on with those movies. Like, I binged all of those not that long ago with my husband, and I could not tell you what happened in the later movies. I don't, my brain refused to retain them. Ooh, that does remind me though, that even though these past couple of horror dolls that I've made were commissions, I do think I'm going to continue this sort of series of making horror icons into fashion dolls, because I really enjoy it and I love having the opportunity to talk about movies that I really like. And so you're probably going to see a Freddy Krueger doll here in the future. Maybe Jason, maybe other ones that I'm not just going to list a bunch of horror movies, but you get it. If you have anything you'd like, I always say this, if you have anything you'd like to say, leave it in that comment section. I love to hear it. Now we can move on to the chalk pastels, and for this look, I was really trying to keep everything pretty light and natural, because I feel like Sydney's vibe, especially in the first movie, is sort of just like youthful and tired. She does have these sort of like bags under her eyes a little bit, which I do think fits for a teen that is traumatized. You know, she probably's not sleeping too great. God, I'll never get over that scene where her boyfriend is like, why don't you get over it? Like, yeah, your mom was killed, but I mean, like, my mom walked out on our family, and, like, I'm doing fine. Billy, you do murder her. What are you talking about? Oh, it's just... I would go insane. She's a better person than me. If someone said that to me, I don't know what I would do. And she still, spoilers for a movie that came out, like, almost 30 years ago, she still sleeps with him after that. And she's like, you know what, you're right. I should get over it. I've been living in the past. I should live in them now. Like, girl, what are you talking about? Well, I guess being a teen is just like that, but it's just like, girl, dump him. He's told you to get over your mom being murdered. Believe him. Yeah, sure, it comes out that he also is, like, the killer, but, like, that's, like, the least of your worries at that point. Dump him because he's rude to you. He minimizes your problems. Honestly, stop trying to give Sydney boyfriends. Like, sure, she deserves love. We all do. But every boyfriend that she's had in these movies have been awful. I mean, I only really remember two. One is the killer, and the other one does a whole, like, song number for her in front of the whole cafeteria, and that is, like, the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen in my life. It's like, here's a necklace, I'm gonna sing a little song for you. It's like, whatever, I love you. It's gross. Stop it. Anyway, here I am repainting her lash line because it got sort of dulled down in the blushing process with all the white pastel. And now I'm adding her catch lights, and that's the end of her face up. Now she just needs a few layers of liquid sealant and she's good to go. I decided not to film the hair process this week because this video is already pretty long. Woo, look at that, all finished. I kind of took some inspiration from her, like, third movie look. And now I can move on to her body, so I am using Sharpie around the joints of all of her sort of arm appendages. And once that is done, I am giving a couple of coats of black acrylic paint to her hands and most of her arms. I'm using this to sort of create a gloved look. And I sort of got the Sharpie tip from a Doll Motion video, I think. It just prevents, you know, anything from showing if the paint cracks. Now I'm giving them a coat of matte Mod Podge to both protect the paint as well as give it a little bit of a, you know, a sheen, because despite the name, it is not perfectly matte. Once everything is completely dry, I could reattach everything and move on to her outfit. For her dress, I'm using this old t-shirt that served me well for many years, but now it's time for it to be repurposed. So I measured it out against her body, and I'm cutting out a loose rectangle that it basically just needs to, like, vaguely be enough material for what I'm doing. And once I have that, I am fitting it around her body and sort of mostly just focusing on getting the torso portion fitted to her body. So I'm just sort of gluing that down in the back, making sure to get some in her butt crack, because I guess that's part of the torso? I don't know. And once that is all glued down, I'm sort of just trimming things up, and I am tattering the bottom. So I'm just sort of cutting it into these thin strips and sort of pulling on it and tugging on it to make it look a bit tattered, but, like, not realistically tattered, more like costume tattered, because it's supposed to be a costume, you know? So I made sure it looked a little bit costumey, but a little organic sort of feel, you know? Now I'm taking some wire and I am making these little loops at the end, that way they don't catch on anything. And once they're sort of looped up, I begin wrapping it around her torso to create, like, I don't know, like a wire corset, kind of just like a little torso belt. I just wanted to bring a little bit of shine and a little bit of a different texture to her midsection, just to make it a little bit more interesting. Now I'm repeating the process that I did on her arms to her legs, because I decided that for underneath her dress, I wanted to create a similar look of the sort of shiny, tight legging, sort of not quite latex, but a little latexy, you know, just to bring a little bit of an edge. Because, like, I contemplated just making her socks, but it wouldn't have the right sheen to them. And I am applying this Mod Podge with my fingers because I ruined my original brush and I didn't feel like ruining another one, so fingers it is. And now I'm making her a cowl. I think that's what it's called, her little hood portion. So I'm tracing out the rejected doll to sort of make these little pattern pieces, and this is what I ended up with. And then I sewed it together. I did a really bad job of showing it off. It was kind of a weird little piece of fabric, but hopefully once it's actually on her, it makes more sense. And the hood does fit. I just took a little bit of work to get it on there, and once I have it on her head, I sort of just closed the center bit with a tiny bit of hot glue to keep it all together. For her shoes, I just painted these bad boys black. I contemplated doing something a little bit more exciting, but I like the pure black look, you know, keep it simple. Now we're on to the really exciting stuff. So obviously Ghostface would not be Ghostface without the mask. So I decided to make the mask out of clay, and all the clay that I have is this very, very old air dry clay that I'm trying to bring back to life here by adding in some Mod Podge and some water and trying to work it in. It really takes a lot of work because it's very hard and it doesn't want to get into all the nooks and crannies. What I ended up doing was pressing it flat against the table and just sort of like smearing it out with my thumb to work it in, and I found that sort of worked the best. Every time I got a piece finished, I rolled it up and then sort of had my little section of prepared clay until eventually I got something workable. And now I can sculpt the mask. I wanted to make sure that this mask would be big enough to sort of feasibly cover an Ever After High face, because, you know, what's the point of a mask if it can't cover your face? It defeats the purpose. For the mouth and the eye holes, I did this sort of like scooping motion to sort of scoop out the clay from the inside. I'm not a sculptor typically, but I found that this worked. I think this is called subtractive sculpting. There's a little word, an art word. Am I doing it, kids? Once the clay is nice and dry, you can start sanding, and I've found that sanding is just as vital to shaping a piece as, you know, the sculpting part is. Like, I did a lot of reshaping in the sanding process. You can see me with a nail file trying to get a little bit symmetrical, and this part was really satisfying, seeing everything starting to get kind of smoothed out and brought together. And once it's all done and sanded, you can give it a coat of paint. Once that's all dry, I can give it a coat of matte Mod Podge. To be able to attach it to her face, I'm sanding the back of it to create a rough surface for the glue to stick to, and I am hot gluing a length of embroidery thread to the back of the mask. She's still missing one vital accessory though, and that's her knife. For this knife, I'm using a similar method to the one I used to make my knife for Chucky, though obviously this one has a very different shape to the blade. I've actually never made a knife like this before, and I was a little intimidated by it because of the drop tip to it, but I'm still using construction paper and I'm still wrapping it around a toothpick for the tang, I think that's what the part of that knife is. And to make a hand guard, I'm using a little strip of construction paper and just cutting a tiny rectangle out and fitting it to the size that I need. Once that's done, you can just glue it in place and fold it over, and you have a hand guard. I'm cutting the toothpick to size because it was way too long, because the handle on this knife is actually pretty short, and I'm just laying down some hot glue and sort of just sculpting the handle out of this hot glue using the tip. And if you wet your fingers, you can actually sort of like roll it around and mold it while it's still warm, and it won't burn you. Once everything is shaped the way you like it, it's ready for paint. So I'm basing everything out in black because for whatever reason metallic paint just looks better with a black base coat, and I'm painting things the way they're meant to be painted. Here's the knife all finished. I think it is probably my favorite little knife I've ever made, and with that final little accessory, she's all done. And here's the final result. I am so happy. Hello?
Hello, Randy.
Who is this?
You tell me.
Chris, don't be an asshole.
Are you alone in the house?
Chris, you know, if you had something in mind, you can just say it. You don't have to be all creepy about it. You know, I don't like that sort of stuff.
I'm not Chris.
Alright. Who is this then?
The question isn't who am I, it's where am I.